They laughed first, softly, the way people do when they think cruelty can be hidden behind manners, and then louder, openly, when they realized no one would stop them. The town square was white with winter. The wooden buildings crouched low under heavy snow, and every eye seemed fixed on her as she stood there in her patched dress, hands trembling, breath fogging the cold air. She had known this moment would come. She had felt it in her bones the day she said yes. Still, nothing prepares a person for being judged by an entire town at once. "That's the man you chose?" Someone muttered. "A broke widower with 3 mouths already crying for bread?" Another voice laughed. 3 daughters, no less, no sons. No future. The words cut deeper than the wind. She did not answer. She kept her eyes on him. He stood a few steps away, tall but worn down by life, snow dusting the shoulders of his old brown coat. One arm cradled a bundled infant, the baby's small hand reaching outward as if sensing the tension in the air. At his side stood the girls, thin but clean, clutching small stuffed bears like lifelines. They looked up at him with trust so complete it hurt to see. He was not a handsome man by town standards. His beard was rough, his hands scarred, his boots cracked from years of hard ground. He owned no land anyone spoke of, no business, no fine house. All the town knew was that his wife had died years earlier, leaving him alone with children and grief, and that he worked when work could be found and disappeared when it couldn't. To them, that was the whole story. To her, it was never enough. They had warned her. The women whispered at the well. The men shook their heads at the saloon. "You could do better," they said. "You're young, still strong. Still pretty if you cleaned up." They said love didn't fill bellies, that pity wasn't marriage, that she'd be back begging by spring. Even the preacher hesitated before blessing the union, his eyes searching her face for doubt. But there was none. She had seen something they had not. She had seen how he bent to speak to his daughters at eye level, how his voice softened when he thought no one listened, how he carried grief without letting it turn into bitterness. She had seen him give his last coin to buy medicine for another man's child. She had seen the way the girls clung to one another like survivors of the same storm. She did not marry him because he was poor. She married him because he was good. Still, goodness does not silence a mocking crowd. "Poor thing," a woman said loudly, pretending sympathy. "She'll learn soon enough." Another laughed and pointed at the children. 3 girls. "Imagine the work." The infant stirred, sensing the raised voices, and let out a small cry. Instinctively, the man adjusted his grip. Murmuring soft words meant only for the child. That quiet act, so gentle, made her chest ache. She stepped closer to him, though every step felt like walking into fire. The snow crunched under her thin shoes. She felt exposed, small, but she lifted her chin. If this was her choice, she would stand in it fully. Behind her, a group of townspeople gathered, faces half hidden by scarves and hats, eyes sharp with judgment. Children pointed. Men smirked. Women whispered. No one offered help. No one offered warmth. This town measured worth in property and bloodlines, in sons and silver. A man without land and heirs was invisible at best, a burden at worst. A woman who tied herself to such a man was foolish. That was the rule. And rules once written are hard to erase. The girls watched her closely. The eldest, barely old enough to understand words like marriage, but old enough to feel rejection, held her teddy bear tighter. The middle one stared at the snow, as if hoping it would swallow her whole. The youngest looked up at her father's face, searching for reassurance. He gave it with a nod so small no one else would notice. She saw it, and in that moment she knew the weight she had chosen to carry. It was heavy, yes, but it was not empty. They left the square under a sky that threatened more snow. No celebration followed, no gifts, no feast, just a quiet walk away from the noise, the sound of boots and small shoes pressing into white ground. Their home sat on the edge of town, a weather-beaten house with a crooked fence and smoke that sometimes rose, sometimes didn't. Inside, the air was cold but clean. The children knew where everything was. They moved with the careful efficiency of those who had learned not to ask for much. She rolled up her sleeves that night and cooked what little there was. The man apologized more than once. "I'll do better," he said, not as a promise meant to impress, but as a vow meant to be lived. She believed him. Winter deepened. Work grew scarce. The mocking did not stop. People watched, waiting for her to regret it. Some even placed bets on when she would leave, but she stayed. She patched clothes, stretched meals, taught the girls songs to keep spirits warm. At night, when the children slept, she and the man spoke quietly by the fire, sharing memories, hopes, fears. He never spoke of his past beyond what was necessary. There was something careful about the way he avoided certain questions, like a door kept closed not out of shame but protection. She did not push. Trust, she believed, could not be demanded. It had to be earned. One evening, as snow fell thick and silent, the eldest girl asked a question that stopped the room. Why do people hate us? The fire popped. The baby slept. The man's jaw tightened. Before he could answer, she spoke. They don't hate you, she said gently. They don't know you. The girl frowned, considering this. Will they ever? She asked. The man looked into the flames, and for the briefest moment, something like sorrow and resolve crossed his face. Someday, he said quietly, when the time is right. Spring did not come easily that year. Hunger brushed close. Cold lingered. The town's judgment hardened, and yet something else grew inside that small house. Resilience, love, and a secret waiting beneath the surface, patient as the land itself. The townspeople believed they knew the whole story. They believed poverty was all this man had to offer. They were wrong. And soon, very soon, the ground beneath their certainty would crack open. Before the story turns, before the truth rises, remember this: the greatest transformations often begin in silence. If you're still here, still listening, it means you understand that stories like these matter. Stories of faith, endurance, and unseen worth. Subscribe to the channel now, because what comes next will change everything, and you won't want to miss the moment when judgment meets truth. The change did not come with thunder or announcement. It came quietly, the way truth often does, wrapped in ordinary moments that only make sense once they have passed. One morning, before dawn had fully broken, the man rose from bed and dressed without waking anyone. The house was still cold, the fire little more than embers, and the snow outside had hardened into a crust that crunched beneath his boots. He stood for a long moment at the door, listening to the soft breathing of his children, then stepped outside and disappeared into the pale light. This was not unusual. He often left early in search of work. But this time was different. This time he did not go toward town. When she woke, she felt it immediately, a restlessness, a tug at the edge of instinct. She fed the baby, helped the girls dress, and waited. Hours passed. The town stirred. Smoke rose from chimneys. He did not return. By midday, concern pressed into her chest like a weight. She bundled the children and stepped outside, asking neighbors if they had seen him. The answers were the same as always: shrugs, indifference, thin smiles that suggested she should already know better than to worry about a man like him. It was then that the eldest girl tugged her sleeve and whispered. He went the other way. They followed the child's pointing finger to a narrow trail at the edge of town, half buried under snow and ignored by everyone else. It led toward the hills, rough and uneven, the kind of path only someone familiar with hardship would choose. She hesitated only a moment before taking the first step. The trail was steep, winding through trees that grew thicker and darker as they climbed. The cold bit hard, the baby cried, and the younger girls stumbled more than once, but they did not turn back. Something told her that whatever waited ahead mattered, not just for him, but for all of them. Hours later, the trail opened suddenly, and the world changed. Before them lay a valley hidden between high ridges, untouched by the harshness surrounding it. Snow clung lightly to the ground, but beneath it, green showed through, grass, real grass, alive in a season when nothing else should have been. A river ran through the center, unfrozen, clear and steady. Wooden fences stretched in careful lines. Barns stood solid and well kept. Orchards slept under winter's blanket, their branches heavy with promise. And there, near the riverbank, stood the man, no longer hunched, no longer small, moving with confidence as he directed a handful of workers she had never seen before. The girls gasped. The baby stopped crying. She could not speak. He turned when he heard them, surprise flashing across his face before softening into something else. Relief. He walked toward them, boots firm on the ground, and for the first time since she had known him, she saw him not as the town had defined him, but as he truly was. I wanted to show you when the time was right, he said quietly. I didn't want you marrying a promise. I wanted you to marry me. The story poured out slowly. The valley had belonged to his family for generations, passed down quietly, never spoken of in town. When his wife died, grief had swallowed him whole. He had retreated here, tending the land in silence. rebuilding piece by piece, choosing anonymity over attention. The town saw a widower scraping by. They never saw the man who rose before dawn to manage livestock, who invested carefully, who protected this place like a sanctuary. I wanted my daughters to grow without greed chasing them, he said. I wanted them judged for who they were, not what we owned. She listened, tears freezing on her cheeks, understanding at last why he never defended himself, why he accepted mockery without protest. He had nothing to prove until now. Word spread faster than snow melt. Someone had followed, then another. By the next day, townspeople stood at the valley's edge, staring in disbelief. The same mouths that had mocked fell silent. The same eyes that had dismissed him now widened with awe. They saw fertile land, strong structures, flowing water. Wealth not measured in coins alone, but in foresight, discipline, and care. Men who had laughed asked for work. Women who had whispered asked forgiveness. The preacher came, hat in hand, voice trembling as he spoke of humility and mistaken judgment. He offered no speeches, no triumph, only work. Jobs were given, food was shared. The valley became a lifeline not just for his family, but for the town itself. And the woman, once pitied, once mocked, now walked beside him as an equal, her hands busy, her voice respected. The girls ran freely, laughter echoing where judgment once lived. The baby took first steps on grass that should not have existed. The town changed slowly, painfully, learning that worth hidden is still worth all the same. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the ridges, she asked him why he finally revealed the valley. He looked at his daughters, then at her. "Because they learned to stand tall when they thought we had nothing," he said. "They deserve to know what patience can grow." She leaned into him, knowing the truth of it deep in her bones. And those who once mocked, they remembered. Every time they passed the valley, every time they spoke her name, they remembered how wrong they had been.